My name is Angelo Caruso. We're about to start a program on effective leadership, which is the art of essentially getting people to do stuff. I like two-part titles, and I'm going to give you some actual strategies and techniques that you can use to become more effective as a leader, as a motivator, as a persuader. And of course, if we're going to create peace in the world, we're going to have to get very, very good at persuasion. We're up against some big guns, so to speak. And we're going to have to get really good at getting our message out there and making this happen. I like two-part titles when I talk. So the two-part title today is Effective Leadership, Getting People to Do Stuff. And the reason I like two-part titles is because of the work of Roger Sperry, who in the 1970s discovered something called brain dominance theory. You know this concept as right brain and left brain thinking. So if you think of the two titles as applying themselves to both halves of the human brain. So the left half of the brain is the rational, it's the linear and predominantly male side of the brain, if you will. And so that topic or title tends to be clinical, kind of like a white paper, right? Effective leadership. You with me? And then the right brain is nonlinear. It's touchy-feely. It likes to laugh and sing, and it likes poetry. So the second half of the title today is Getting People to Do Stuff. So you understand the appeal, right? Words are important. There are over 500,000 words in the English language, and the words that we choose and the combinations of words that we choose are what help us, in a great way, become effective when we're talking to people. Now, of course, it's not just what we say, but it's also how we say it, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. So I am very lucky because many of you know I'm the sitting governor for District 6380, which is our host district for this conference. And I'm also a professional speaker. And this year, next year, it's kind of a fuzzy thing. It depends on when you start counting. I know when I became a Rotarian. I'm not sure when on the day I became a professional speaker. I'm not sure. But it's roughly 20 years to this day. Roughly, for both. So 20 years ago, I applied to go on a trip to a place called South Africa with an organization called Rotary. I didn't even know how to pronounce it. Rotary. It was in the newspaper. And to go on this trip, I would have to apply. I would have to essentially go on a weekend with a bunch of other people as candidates for the trip, and then be selected, if I was lucky enough, be selected to go on the trip. And at the time, it was called the Group Study Exchange. That program is called something different now in Rotary. It's called the VTT, and things change, and that's fine. And you could not be a Rotarian to go on the trip. But I learned so much about this great service organization in the 6 months that I got ready to go on the trip. I mean, I learned more than most Rotarians learn in 6 years. And I committed to joining this great organization when I got back from South Africa, and that's exactly what I did. South Africa was an interesting time in 1995, especially as I reflect back on it now. I'm a consultant, right? So my brain is always connecting dots. How is this related to this? So think about this. 20 years ago, when I came into Rotary, I went to probably one of the most unpeaceful places on the planet. I went to South Africa 2 years after apartheid had officially ended. And I say officially ended because in a lot of people's mind, apartheid wasn't over at all. You know what I'm talking about when I say this. So I went to South Africa in a time when the blacks had all the power because Nelson Mandela had, by that time, been released from prison after being in prison for 28 years and then become president of his country. Where does this happen, right? It was an unprecedented time. So the blacks had all the power, whites had all the money still, and both groups were getting to know each other. Can you imagine the unrest? Only a few years earlier, blacks had to have a permit to be out on the streets after 7 o'clock at night. And now they were free to go out at night. I mean, it's almost incomprehensible for us to think about how this must have been. And that's what our team walked into. It gets better. My team was a mixed racial team, 3 blacks, 2 whites. I say black because 2 of us were African American and 1 of us was Canadian American. African American, African Canadian, right? So it was fascinating. And now we're staying in the Afrikaners' homes, all of us. no matter what color we were. Fascinating. And I mention all this just because of peace and how it works and how it's floating in my head today. And it turns out that peace is, there's a lot of psychology in peace. It's a lot of it, it's how we think. Dr. Nandi was talking about you are what you eat, right? He's a doctor, of course he's going to say that, and it's true. But really, we are what we think as well, aren't we? You are what you think. And I'm a fan of this Dr. Albert Ellis, who passed away a few years ago. He was the guy who discovered this thing called REBT. Does anybody remember this? REBT was Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. And the idea of REBT is, it was a great little linear progression. Dr. Ellis said that what you think about becomes how you feel, and how you feel determines how you behave. So he thought there was like this direct relationship between what you think, how you feel, and then how you act. How many of you think that might be true? I mean, it's a complicated process. It's probably not that simple, but he won a lot of awards for this because it was a fresh way of thinking about how we could impact not only our behavior but our feelings by changing our thoughts by the psychology. And it's interesting, I should follow Dr. Nandi because psychology is still not recognized as a formal discipline by the American Medical Association. So you can discount it if you want, but there's something going on with how we think about peace and how we think about psychology that helps us get the job done. That's the more complex version of this. The more simple version is something that Aristotle came up with many, many years ago, and Sigmund Freud a few years after him. Freud actually came up with something we call now the pain-pleasure principle. Some of you have heard of this. It says that Americans, Canadians, people from all over the world are motivated by only two things. Anybody know what they are? Pain and pleasure, that's exactly right. Because pain and pleasure is like a lever, right? And some people respond to pain and some people respond to pleasure. It depends on how you were raised or the last 3 jobs that you had, right? Because if your boss has conditioned you to motivate you through pain, then you respond to discomfort. You respond to deadlines, right? You respond to pressure. But if you've come up the other side of the channel, you respond to praise and motivation and spotlight, right? I'm a pleasure person. I love the spotlight. I'm in the spotlight now. And some people don't like the spotlight. We've had speakers come on. You know, I've been backstage and we see them with their notes. And I know they're nervous. They don't tell me, but I know they're nervous because their paper is going like that when they're getting ready to come on stage. They don't like the spotlight, right? They're not motivated by that adulation that speakers get when they come on stage. So we're all different. And how we attach ourselves to that psychology helps us become more effective not only as leaders, but as marketers, as salespeople. And I spend a lot of time doing sales training with salespeople all over the world, actually. And talk about getting people to do stuff, right? You want people to get out their wallet and pay for something. And one of my clients are paying for an algorithm. Check this out. Talk about psychology, right? The guys that sell an algorithm don't understand it, and the people buying the algorithm don't understand it. Think about that. And yet, if you have the kind of psychology that allows you to talk about this algorithm as a performing entity that will help you increase your wealth, it's called active management. Bruce Dunbar's here. He's in wealth management. It's just called active management. And so a computer's making the decision. And we sell this algorithm even though nobody understands it. It's a fascinating thing, this thing called psychology. And your perception changes based on how you take information in. So how do you get your information? Because these days, and it wasn't like this when I was growing up, these days the news station that you watch likely pre-digests the news for you, and it's actually reverse engineering. Most people watch news stations that they will agree with before the news reaches their ears. When I was a newspaper editor at the University of Michigan, Dearborn, yeah, Dearborn, we had this thing that we had to have objective articles in the paper. That was when fair and balanced actually meant both, fair and balanced. And if you want to get a good look at news, try reading, because we had just come back from Britain, try reading international news reports of what's happening in the United States, because in a way they're not Democrat or Republican, they're just watching. That's a fascinating slant, right? So talk about perception as a kid in London. Talk about how I started to understand the world growing up, and maybe you're the same way. I was born in a time where we experienced the British invasion. Not the first British invasion. Now, when they talk about England taking over the whole world, remember the phrase, the sun never sets on the British Empire. You know, the Brits always fashioned this as a good thing, and we're taking over the world, right? They did it by force, everybody. You understand? It was the opposite of peace. The sun never sets on, it sounds like a movie. The sun never sets on the British Empire. We're invading your country. It's essentially what's happening. I mean, think about it. The Pilgrims left England to come here to start another country. And what did England do? Followed them over to fight. I mean, I'm breaking it down pretty simply, but that's essentially what happened. We had to say, go back home, man. We were trying to get away from you people. It's fascinating. So I grew up during a time of the second British invasion, which are the Beatles, the Dave Clark Five, all the bands. And my brothers and I are learning to play musical instruments in school. And then we realized there was 4 kids in the house. We had trouble finding our own practice time, so we would practice together. And my brothers and I would be doing duets and then trios, and eventually the 4 of us were all in a combo together, and we started playing music. We did pretty good in the music business. We ended up touring the United States in a rock band. We opened for acts like Rick Springfield and Corey Hart and Joan Jett. And all of it got started because I thought I knew about the world, because I knew where the Beatles came from, London. And again, my consultant brain, even firing back then, I'm reading the newspaper about the Beatles in London recording at Abbey Road, which we had a chance to see last week. And a few years later, I'm reading about in London, don't stand next to a garbage can. Why? Because that's where the IRA and various terrorist groups put the bombs. That was the routine back then. It was in a garbage can. They later graduated to other types of tin containers like airplanes. But that's how it worked. And around the same time as the British invasion, there was a guy named Roger Miller. Anybody remember this singer, Roger Miller? He was a country boy, but he's very clever, this Roger Miller, and he was a wordsmith. And later, as I becoming a writer, I became even more enchanted with Roger Miller. Back then, you know, we had phonograph records, 45s. We have young people in the room. You probably don't remember phonographs or 45s or the Beatles. I was talking to a young person the other day, and I said the Beatles, and it was a puzzled expression, and I said Paul McCartney's old group. And they said Paul McCartney was in a band before the Beatles? They didn't know. Yeah. And so Roger Miller had this great song, and I'm going to sing a little bit of the song for you because the lyric touched me deeply last week, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But the song was called England Swings. But he didn't say England because he needed 3 syllables. So he sang England. This was Roger Miller's gift, that he didn't care about the language. He just made it a good song, right? So the song was, you might recall it, England swings like a pendulum do, bobbies on bicycles 2 by 2. Westminster, I'll be the Tower of Big Ben. Did you hear me? Westminster, I'll be the Tower of Big Ben. The rosy red cheeks of the little children. Anybody remember that song? Oh man, a great song. Makes me smile. So last week, Renee Pathidis and I, Renee's my girlfriend, she's here and enjoying the conference, and we went to London for the first time. And we were touring London on the day of the terrorist attack. In fact, we were on the Westminster Bridge 2 hours before this coward drove his car down the sidewalk. Now, our lives and our day were completely unaffected by the day. I am not a victim of the day. We monitored what had been happening on our cell phones as we continued to tour the city. We knew something was up, sirens everywhere. You could start to see police, the different look in the police officers' eyes on the street that day. You can imagine. And I remember being on the Westminster Bridge because I said to the guide, I want to take a picture of the London Eye. The London Eye is the big Ferris wheel that you saw in all the news reports. But you want to take it from the bridge because the bridge actually arches like this, right? And if you could get on the bridge, you could see the London Eye, and it's a beautiful view. And so we started to climb the bridge on the same sidewalk where the terrorist drove his car. But I couldn't get a clear view because the trucks were passing by. And so I said to the tour guide, let's go to the other side of the bridge where I can take a photograph. He said, no problem. Mind you, this was 2 hours before the attack. Nobody's thinking about anything. And as we crossed the street and as we mingled with the crowd that day, I'm sure you've seen the statistics. I believe 5 people were killed and more than 40 were injured. Is that there were thousands of people in the street, not hundreds, thousands of people. They're all spread out. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students from all over the world. And we knew they were from all over the world because they asked us to take pictures of them. And we asked them to take pictures of us. And we heard different languages being spoken. We heard a lot of French. We heard Japanese. We heard a lot of Arabic that day. Miraculously, only one child was killed. As far as I know, one child was killed or hurt on that day. I don't know how the numbers are so low because all I think about now are the rosy red cheeks of the little children. And so here I am with that consultant brain trying to connect the dots between effective leadership, peace, putting on a good program for you, and this is what's on my mind. And it occurs to me that, oh, by the way, when we were in London, the tour guide was a Brit, of course, and we saw a lot of British people there. And I said to them, how do you feel right now? And they said, and I asked quite a few people this question. I drive Renee crazy because when we're on trips, I often ask the same question over and over again because I think you get better data points. So I say, I'll ask people, where's your favorite restaurant? And by the 5th time I've asked somebody, Renee's like elbowing me, knock it off, man. But I find that we get different answers to the question. That's interesting to me. And so I kept asking, how do you feel today? How do you feel? And you know what a lot of people said? I'll bet 4 out of 10 people said, we're used to it. But they were all older people that were used to getting bombs and terrorist things going on around them. Younger people are not used to terrorism. And that's why it's so important that we have a day donated, committed to young people today. I know they were in the room yesterday too. But isn't that important? If you're already used to it, it's your new normal. And young people are not used to. Young people actually still think they can change the world. The rest of us have said, probably not. And that's why we need young people on the team. Great messages this morning from the various speakers. So if this is really about psychology and a bit of salesmanship, where does marketing come into play? I'll now dovetail a little bit of my Rotary experience, not only as a club president, but as a district governor, and tell you that we're trying to change something that we've been used to in Rotary. We've been used to lame marketing efforts. We've been used to decades and decades and decades of not having to sell our organization to anybody, because it used to be Rotarians just got up in the morning and did the right thing. And if you did the right thing, people would line up to be in your Rotary Club. And we know that's not the case anymore. We now have to sell Rotary to people. And there's a catch. You got to sell Rotary to the right people, because if you sell it to the wrong people, what happens? They leave within 100 days, within a year. And so it's a tricky combination. And we've tried various things in the district that have worked really, really well. I want to share a few of them with you right now. We tried something simple in our marketing like word substitution. We just swapped out one word for another one just to do like an A/B test, like we used to say in the music business, and see which one performed better. I'll do a couple easy examples for you. So if you're trying to get people to come to your regular meeting, right, whether you're in Rotary or not, you want them to come to a regular meeting. It sounds something like this in the Rotary world. You'd say to somebody, hey, we're having a Rotary meeting next Tuesday. Would you like to come? Now, let's just think about this. You're a Rotarian, and you're having a regular meeting on Tuesday, and you're inviting a person who doesn't belong in your Rotary Club to come to a Rotary meeting. What do most people say to that? Very nice invitation. No, thank you. Because, to paraphrase Groucho Marx, why would I care to go to a meeting of a club I don't belong to? Groucho actually said, I don't care to belong to a group that wouldn't have me as a member. But it's the same basic concept. So we swapped out the word meeting for the word lunch. Hey, would you like to come to a Rotary lunch with me on Tuesday? Because, see, everybody has to eat lunch. And the response rate goes through the roof, relatively speaking, because of substituting the word meeting for lunch. It was an easy thing to do. Getting people to change the word was not as easy, but changing the word's quite easy. Sometimes when I do it, I even leave out the word Rotary. Would you like to come to lunch? And the guy goes, yeah, sure, I'd love to. We get there, we walk in, he says, this is a Rotary meeting, isn't it? And I said, yeah, it is. Look at, we're having chicken, you know. And we sit down, we start eating. And they're never mad at me because I made them come to Rotary. It's still a lunch, it's still my treat, it's still basically the same concept. But I got them in the door, you see? And it's marketing. It's marketing. It's just word substitution. Here's another one. A lot of, and how many of you are Rotarians? I want to know if I'm talking to the choir. How many are not in Rotary yet or not really knowing much about it? That's fine. So a lot of Rotary meetings have a speaker. But we call that person, oddly enough, we call him a speaker. And sometimes we call him a program. We're having a program today, right? So we found that when you change the word speaker to the word keynote, more people came to the event. By the way, it wasn't a meeting anymore. It was an event. You see? And we got better speakers when we called it a keynote. You'd call the speaker and you'd say, would you like to be our program for the day? And the guy goes, no, how much does it pay? We go, we don't pay speakers. He goes, okay, then I'm busy that day, right? It's hard to get people. But you call them and you say, would you like to be our keynote speaker that day? Keynote? Yeah, I'd like to do more keynotes. What day is it? It's amazing. And when we promoted it as a keynote speaker versus a regular speaker, right? I mean, why do we do this? Why do banks have basic checking accounts? I mean, if you're trying to sell the checking account, you do not want to put the word basic in front of it. Outside at the coffee bar, I think it says regular coffee. I would say it's delicious coffee, personally, but I didn't put it out. Words matter. Absolutely true. Finally, it's not just words, it's the physical representation. It's how we present ourselves visually, right? So a big thing in the Rotary world is, and even at the conference this weekend, we've seen it, is people would get out of their chair to stand in, where they can get a nice cross-section of the room. They tilt their camera sideways so that they can get the panoramic view of a bunch of people sitting around. And then we post it to Facebook. This is what I did this weekend. I sat around with a bunch of people. You should have been here. It was action-packed. See? It was action-packed. I'm even an action stance right now to show you it was action-packed. So I tell my club, I tell my district, please do not post photos of Rotarians sitting around. Sitting is a gerund, right? ING word. There's a million of them. Post photos of Rotarians laughing. ING, laughing. And you'll get more attention, right? Because Rotary must be fun. Look at those people laughing. You see? And it's all just positioning, man. It's just so fun. I want to give you a couple of tips for getting things done in your part of the world, whatever it is you're trying to do. A lot of us think we don't have any power because we're up against people with titles like senators and congressmen and presidents and this type of thing. You have all the power you need. You have all the power in the world. You have a different kind of an authority. Your authority is even more powerful than the person with the title, and it's called, write this down, moral authority. Moral authority. See, the difference between you and some of these other people is you know what the right thing to do is. And you're willing to do the right thing. And all you have to do is remind people what the right thing to do is. Now, what happens a lot is people in the activist area, we tend to, I don't know, we tend to be a little slipshod sometimes in our communication methods, right? Some people in the activist area tend to be a little bit too fervent. They're perceived as too fervent. Some of us are perceived to be too passive-aggressive, right? So we want to, well, if you really want to be effective, you want to avoid zealotry. You want to avoid being passive-aggressive. It just is a bad reflection on you as a person and whoever you're representing. So there are other techniques for this that will sharpen your game a bit. And one of them is this idea we use in the consulting business all the time. It's called triangulation. So triangulation works like this. If you can imagine, I'm talking with somebody who I want to get somebody to do something, and I keep telling them, you need to do this. I say, you need to do this. You. And then from his point of view, he's now arguing this way with you about this thing, right? It becomes you versus them. You've probably had this dynamic someplace in your relationships. You versus, how many of you have been married? Married even now? Yeah. You versus the other person. You versus the other person, you see? And it wears you down. And it actually, over time, it will destroy the relationship. So a handy technique is something called triangulation. And triangulation says, instead of me coming at you like this, I say, hey, look, these are the people you care about, and they want you to do this. You see the triangle like this? So now it's not me versus you. It's not anybody versus you, but the people you care about want this. And that's a more complex sale, but you can work it out. And it eliminates the adversarial relationship. In fact, now you're an advocate. Hey, let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what somebody told me, right? So when I do sales coaching, my salespeople tell me that they're having a problem with management. So instead of me going to management and saying, you need to change this, you need to change this, I say, listen, I don't care what you do. Honestly, I don't care what you do, but your salespeople would like you to do this. You see? And that's how it works, triangulation. It's pretty cool. Okay. Are you enjoying the tips so far? Is this good? Yeah? Okay. With Ashish's permission, I want to give out some sets of my books. I'm going to give out 2 sets of my books today. There's no obligation. And I'm going to give out, let's do this. I'm going to give out my 5 Cool Ideas book. This has over 60 topics on various things like, 5 cool ideas for better listening, 5 cool ideas for becoming a better speaker, 5 cool ideas for efficient email, right? It's a great little handy book. And this is called Little Ideas with Big Results. This is a booklet, and in it are tips like, do you believe what people say or what they do? We've talked about the difference between action and talk at this convention. What is more important, by the way, do you believe what people say or what they do? What they do every time. So this is probably a $25 value online. I'm going to give away 2 sets of them in a minute, and I'll trade you your email address for a chance to win. And I'll assume if you give me your email address that you like my message, and I'll send you messages occasionally. You can take yourself off the list anytime. And if you want to play with me, great. And if not, that's fine too. But we're going to give this away at the end of the program. So would you mind helping collect? Just quietly get out the cards and kind of pass them to the middle. And then in a second, my pal here will do a little sweep and we'll collect the cards. So 2 of these packages in the next 15 or 20 minutes. Thank you. Is Kelly Hall here? I know she's got a lot going on today. Steve, do you know? Kelly, are you in the room? That's cool. Kelly was up on the stage earlier, and I wanted to give her some stage time today because back to my district and how we get people to do stuff in District 6380. For a long time, we've had a situation in the district where we focused on Interact students, or even more specifically, exchange students. Exchange students. And exchange students are an interesting and an important part of Rotary. These are the students that come to town for 1 year, and then they go back home. And we had not been giving much attention to Rotaract students, where the University of Michigan, for example, has a Rotaract Club. And I wanted, and our conference chair, Karen Gabrice, wanted to get those Rotaract students on the stage with us at the district conference. Now, the district conference this year is on Mackinac Island, May 4 through 7, and I tell you that because you're invited. As I mentioned at the dinner last night, how many were at the dinner last night? This year, my district is doing public events sponsored by Rotary. So we don't do Rotary events anymore, you see? When you do a Rotary event that's open to the public, people stay away in droves. Why? They don't belong to Rotary. Very good. It's a Rotary event that's open to the public. I don't belong to Rotary, no thanks. But if you do a public event sponsored by Rotary, oh, different thing. And that's how it works. That's how we're doing our district conference. So we got people from England, and we got people from Tennessee. I can't wait to introduce those two people to come to our district conference May 4 through 7. And we've got, I think, something like 24 Rotaractors coming for the first time in history to our district conference. And then we got even more clever about getting people to do stuff. We had different clubs sponsor a Rotaract room. We did have to promise, sleeping room, we did have to promise the clubs that the Rotaractors would not be throwing the television into the swimming pool. I'm still a little nervous about that one, but we're pretty sure that's not going to happen. And so what happened was they got, again, the scholarship, they got the room awarded, so it didn't cost them anything. Now it smells more like a road trip, right? Bunch of young people jump in the car, they drive up to Mackinac Island, one of the coolest places on earth, no automobiles, just horse carriages and bicycles, if you've never been. And again, you're invited. So just see me after the program, we'll get you in. So that's another way that we did something different this year in District 6380. Another example is tonight, we're having a $1 million dinner. Now, other districts have done this year, but here's why I wanted to do it this year in District 6380. Every year, almost like clockwork, our district gives about $300,000, $320,000 to the Rotary Foundation. You doing the math? 330 versus $1 million. So I committed our district to $1 million dinner early in the year. You should have been at that meeting. And then, just to show you how people think, psychology, we have our first conference call with the $1 million dinner committee, and we hit our first roadblock. Because I got a friend from Tennessee. I don't know why Tennessee's in this speech more than England. I got on the call with Brian Hall, who's a past district governor in Tennessee, and I said, Brian, with the committee now, I said, Brian, you all had $1 million dinner, and I'd like you to tell my people how you did it so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I thought this was a stroke of genius on my part, right? So Brian Hall, who has the thickest country accent in the world, starts talking like this. Brian says, well, Michael, it was quite simple. We just got 40 people to come to a meal, and we got each of the 40 people to donate $25,000. There's your $1 million. That's how he said it. There's your $1 million. And I was ecstatic, like, because if this guy can understand it and explain it in one sentence, this is a recipe for success, right? And I was so happy. And Brian finished the call. I said, Brian, thanks very much. You're dismissed, man. Thanks so much for being on the call today. So Brian hangs up. And I said to the committee, okay, you got your marching order. Getting people to do stuff, right? You got your marching order. Just go raise $1 million. And then the first person spoke right after I did said, yeah, but we don't want 40 people to come to the dinner. We want everybody to come. You see, if everybody comes, everybody's not going to be able to give $25,000. So they took the Brian Hall simple formula and tossed it out the window. We eventually worked it out. I'm proud to tell you, and my district doesn't know this yet, we're going to present a check for well over $1 million to the Rotary Foundation tonight in that room we had dinner in last night. You bet. Yeah, you'd clap a lot louder if you ever raised $1 million. That's a lot of money, man. So we don't need your money, but if you'd like to come and learn more about how we did it and watch the balloon drop and watch the little gimmicks that we put into the night to get people to raise and triple our giving from last year, you're welcome to attend. The tickets are only $125, and it's an awesome meal. I saw we had the desserts and stuff, not desserts, but candies and some of these bling that we have in this attached to this event to our room. They're in my room all for 2 days. To watch where you walk. And it's an amazing event. Renee put it together, and you're going to love it. So see me right after the program. We'll get you in. We have, I think, 15 or 14 tickets left, something like that, and we'd be happy to fill up the room. Okay, Steve Chisnell, come up. I want to talk about Interact now. Would you come up and join me? Give Steve a round of applause, everybody. This guy's amazing. Yeah, you can just jump up here if you can make it. Yeah, not too bad. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Are you enjoying the peace conference?
My kids and I are having a great time.
Tell us about your kids. What's going on? Tell us about your position, how you got here.
I am the Royal Oak Interact Advisor, have been for the last decade or so. I've lost track. But my students are the kinds of kids, as you might expect, that want to get involved now. And so I help them do that.
And you're fantastic. You're very dedicated to the position. You take them on trips, international trips every year, yeah?
Yeah, we're going to Peru this summer. We'll be working at an orphanage and then doing some trekking in the Andes afterwards.
It's amazing. And that's just part of it. Wait till you hear the best part. Now, I'll preface his answer with this. Most Rotary clubs do not have an Interact club. They don't have a high school Interact club. The ones that do have a very small and sometimes inactive Interact club. How many members are in your Interact club?
We've lost count. We're somewhere over 125.
It's the largest Interact club in our district. Yeah, give him a round of applause. That is huge. So it's by far the largest Interact club in our district. And I want to tell you now why I have Steve on the stage with me. It's not because I've got, he wants to know, he's waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's not because I've had to get Steve to do stuff. Steve's a self-starter. He runs the best Interact club in the district, and I never hear from him. He takes my call every time I call him, but I never hear from him. He never wants anything from me, right? The reason I have Steve on stage with me is because when I tell people in the district about Steve Chisnell's awesome success, unprecedented success with the Royal Oak Interact Club, and I hold him up as a standard bearer, my Rotarians remind me, in a way only polite Rotarians can do so, that Steve Chisnell is not actually a Rotarian. And he's not. He's an, what do they call you, an honorable?
I'm an honorary member.
He's an honorary member of the Royal Oak Club. But here's my point, and I'm going to get, I know it's a peace conference, but I'm about to get angry. My Rotarians, the people on my team, when I tell them we got a guy who's cracked the code, who's amazing at this, you must follow his formula. Replicate him, man. He is amazing. We need more people like Steve Chisnell. They say, you know, he's not really a Rotarian. He's only an honorary Rotarian. And I tell them, he's better than a Rotarian. Yeah, all the Rotarians didn't want to clap on that one. He's still not a Rotarian, Michael. He's a teacher at Royal Oak High School, and he can't be a Rotarian. He's already donating a major portion of his life and his social time to the Interact Club. And you know, it's okay if he's not a Rotarian. I don't care if you ever join Rotary, Steve. You're amazing. A round of applause for Steve Chisnell, everybody. You're the best, man. Thank you. He thought something bad was going to happen to him, didn't you? Man, no worries. Okay, so let's bring the cards up. We'll do a drawing, and I've got to protect some time for you because we need you to do a little bit of paperwork, as you know, after attending the breakout. Thank you very much. Brian, stay with me. We'll have you do the drawing. Let's do that. Here. Draw 2 cards. Does anybody else want to be in this? We're good? Okay. Close your eyes and draw 2 cards, if you would. Great. Great. And we'll see who's going to win the books. Thank you very much, sir. Where's we have so many exotic names here today. Wow. Where's Angelica Ramirez? Is it Maigesi? Did I say it right? Angelica, are you here? Okay, come on up. Come on up. And how about Sumed? Sumed Baal, yeah, correct? Yeah, come on up. Give them a round of applause. Hello. How are you? Nice to meet you. Happy to sign the books right after the program. There you are. Hello. Hello, sir. All right, we met before. How are you? For you, sir. My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. So we're going to take a couple of questions if you have any. I don't know that we have the mic live in the center of the room, but if you have questions and you want to make your way to the mic, that's fine. You may also shout them out. That would be fine. I want to give you one more tip for achieving your agenda, becoming an effective leader. It's a technique I've been using for a long time, and you'll like this one. You know enough to do it, but maybe you don't for various reasons. And here's the technique. The person who reaches out first in the interaction has influence in the interaction. when I say reach out, I'm of course demonstrating the handshake. So what happens is we forget to be civil. We forget to be normal about the relations, right? So when the person who reaches out first has influence in any interaction. And I can tell you this plays out in so many different ways. Even yesterday, someone was so interested in getting directions from me at the hotel that he came up, he didn't say hello, he didn't say who he was. He said, and it was right first thing in the morning, man. And he goes, do you know where the such and such is? And I said, good morning, how are you? And what do you think he did? Oh, I'm sorry. He says, I'm sorry, I should have said hello. Good morning, how are you? And he comes right to me, right? He comes right to where we should have been in the first place, which is civility. And then I'm happy to give you directions, you see? So it's just a little example of how this works. But especially when people are excited or upset, how are you? I don't believe we've met. My name's Michael Caruso, right? Excellent. Questions? Yeah?
We should probably get a volunteer to report back on the breakout session.
Sure. Tell us how this works, Brian.
Okay. So we're looking for a volunteer to report back at the breakout session like we had yesterday. Somebody to summarize very quickly what was done here today, and then also what actions the group is going to take at the end. You saw a number of people up on stage yesterday doing that. It's about 2 minutes. Could I get a volunteer from this group to take that on? Anyone? Okay. Thank you very much.
Boy, if you can't get a volunteer at a peace conference, we're hurting. Well done. Questions about anything we talked about today? Comments? Thoughts about anything at all? Yeah? Hey, want to shout it out? Oh, we have a microphone here. Let's come over here. We're recording, and we want to get everybody included. Tell us your name and where you're from. That would be good, too.
Hi, I'm Mary Miller. I'm from right in this area, Ypsilanti, Michigan. And I actually was interested in something that's in the brochure. It says, you know what the 15 most powerful words to use are.
Thank you. Yeah, let's do that. And I appreciate you reminding me, Mary. Thank you very much. We'll let you get back to your chair and then start writing. I'm going to give them to you like this. The 5 most powerful, the 4, the 3, they add up to 15. Probably check the program, make sure I'm not leaving anything else out, Mary. The 5 most powerful words you can ever use with another person are, I am proud of you. I'm proud of you. Everyone likes to hear it. We tend to only use them with children, and that's a mistake. Everyone will sign for that. I'm proud of you. The 4 most powerful words are, what is your opinion, or what do you think? Always find out what the other person thinks before you tell them what you think. That way you can wrap your message in words that are familiar to the other person and comforting to the other person. The 3 most powerful words are, will you please? The 2 most powerful words are what? Thank you. And the number 1 most powerful word you can ever use with another person is that person's name, which is why we give you name badges at the peace conference. Sure. Let's backtrack. The 5 words are, I am proud of you. The 4 words are, what is your opinion? The 3 words are, will you please? The 2 words are, thank you. And the single word is the person's name. I noticed in the program I've also promised this idea of, let's see, I had it just now. Oh, the number 1 thing that people want is, I think, recognition. Everybody wants, I think everybody does stuff for attention. So we do it for attention or we do it not to get attention. So it can go either way. But when you figure out what people's favorite form of recognition is, you'll have it. Some people like to be recognized publicly. Some people like to be recognized privately. Figure it out. Other questions, comments? If I didn't cover something I promised to cover, tell me what you need. I'll get it to you. We have a few minutes left. We have open microphone at a peace conference, and nobody's in front of it. We need you to come to the microphone if you don't mind. Can you get there? Was there somebody else? Yeah, come on. Your name and where you're from?
My name's Nero, and I'm a part of my Interact club at Mona Shores High School, which is in Muskegon.
Hey.
And my question was, How do you influence a body of students where there are people who do not want to participate in a activity? or
Yeah,
event?
well, just telling them that they need to participate is that you versus them again, right? So I think in high school, peer pressure and being a good role model can go a long way, and I bet you're a good role model, sir. So- what's that? Oh, yeah, just stay with me. It's okay. So I think you're a good role model. Is that true?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So what happens is when they see that you're getting things that they want, it could be attention, it could be flexible hours, it could be you got your name in the student newspaper, whatever it is. When they see that you're having more fun than they are, fun is important to people. When they see that you're happier than they are, when you keep inviting them to come along with you to different things, at no obligation,
Okay.
right? This is the idea. That by being a better role model, that people would like to be like you. And sometimes we think that we're not influential in that way, but we absolutely are. Absolutely are. Your hands are in your pocket, sir, is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah, take them out.
All right.
Because this is not you being a confident role model. Take them out.
All right.
And just comfortable at the bottom of your hands, right? Bottom of your arms. That's where they belong, your hands. And you look good. How's that feel?
Feels good.
Okay, good. His voice even got stronger. Thank you very much, sir. You're a good role model. Keep it up.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Hello.
My hands were in my pockets.
That's
too.
fine. What's your name, sir?
Cooper, I'm here and from East Lansing,
Okay.
and I'm not a Rotarian.
That's all right.
We were invited by the DCR here in Ann Arbor to participate for mediators. I've been a mediator, a lawyer, a professor, a father most of all.
You've had a rough life.
And I wondered what your take on this was. We go through a lot of training. We go through lots of preparedness. We're working with models. We work with ways to take care of conflict. And what I found is one of the most effective ways to take care of conflict over my time in mediation and other fields was to let the people really let it go and yell and scream and go at it, because I found one way you can get somebody to say something and not be lying is when they're letting it go and yell and scream.
Okay.
And of course, you let them come down and understand they had to get over that, so I would do that. I just wondered what you felt about that concept and whether you've had actual experience with it.
Yeah, thank you, Cooper.
Other
I
than
certainly
maybe
have
being
yelled
a
at some
parent.
people.
Other than maybe being a parent.
And in fact, this has, bringing our conversation full circle, because I'm getting the sign now to wrap up, in psychology, in particular psychotherapy, and we've got one of my new pals is a psychotherapist. I don't know if he's in the room with us right now, but there were these guys in psychotherapy that practice this thing called primal scream, where you just get in the room and, as Cooper said, let it out, man, get it out. John Lennon allegedly and famously participated in primal scream. And I say whatever works. I don't have much experience in it. I've never participated in it. I'm not a yeller. Even when I'm angry, I don't yell. I figure out another way to do it. So everybody's different. But I am a fan of whatever works, Cooper, and I appreciate your input. I'm getting a sign to wrap up. I have a 30-second goodbye story for you. It's an airplane story. You're going to love it. Anybody flying home? I'm getting on an airplane to fly someplace. This is 10 years ago now. And the pilot comes on as we're all getting settled, and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, would you please take your seats? We'd like to leave early." I've never heard a pilot say this. I didn't know a plane could leave early. Did you? It can. If everyone's on the plane can leave. So it works like a charm, man. Again, marketing. And everybody sits down and buckles up. Everybody's ready to go. And then the pilot comes on to make another announcement. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad that we can leave early because we're expecting some rough weather coming in. And if we don't leave now, you could miss your connection. We want you to know this is going to be a fairly turbulent takeoff. We're asking the flight attendants to remain seated. We've suspended the beverage service. And we want you to know that even though it's getting very overcast outside, as you can see, the visibility is quite poor, we will be flying in a condition we call zero visibility, but it will be safe." That's how he ended his speech. It'll be safe. And so now, everybody's really nervous. Everything's ratcheted up in the cabin. And he was right, man. This is a rock and roll, herky-jerky takeoff. The roughest takeoff I've ever been on, and I got a gajillion miles on Delta. And I think this is it, man. I don't know what's going to happen. An interesting thing happened is that the higher we climbed, the smoother the flight. And we climbed and climbed into bright, pristine sunshine. And you know why this is possible, everybody? Because the sun is out every day, isn't it? Even on an overcast, rainy day like yesterday, the sun was out. All you need to decide as a citizen of the world, as a Rotary Club, as a Rotary District, whatever organization you belong to, is whether you want to fly your plane in the clouds or above them. My name is Michael Angelo Caruso. I will be a Rotarian the rest of my life. We hope you've enjoyed the Peace Conference. I hope to see you tonight at the $1 Million Dinner. Thank you for coming.